Today on Locked On Canadiens, we have our very own correspondent for the Xhekaj family.
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Canadiens. My name is Laura Saba, and I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day every day. As you know, we're free and available wherever you get podcasts, as well as on YouTube as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today, I'm joined once again, reunited for one night only, with my wonderful former co-host, Scott Matla. Scott, how are you doing?
I am road weary. I am very tired, but everything's good. I got quite the experience yesterday as I was leaving the Calder Cup playoffs and looking down at Blue Sky and Reddit and seeing Toronto hasn't changed at all in the year that I've been away from this podcast. So the more things change, the more things stay the same. So I didn't expect a double jersey throwing, but it's quite funny to watch.
Honestly, I was expecting waffles at one point. I know it's been a long time, but I feel like that's a vintage meme. And Toronto fans, like, bring it out. Bring out all the stops. Put out all the stops. All right. The reason you retired, obviously, is because you were on location covering the Laval Rocket playoff game. Obviously, I covered a couple of the highlights on last night's podcast, but what really stood out to you? And I can see you have, instead of sharing your social media, you have billed yourself as an Adam Engstrom apologist. So maybe we start there.
So every time that I've come on this show since leaving, I've put just a different player. The last time I did a show after the Sabres game with you and Ian, in which they won, I was the Lane Hudson zealot for that. So I continue to add different titles to this. I did think Adam Engstrom had some good moments and some bad moments last night. Same with David Reinbacher. But for those who might have been out of the loop, who didn't listen to the show or didn't read my recap at Habs Eyes on the Prize, the Rocket won 5-4 in Rochester last night. Despite being the higher seed, they are playing 2 games on the road and 3 games at home. It is a format in which the AHL allows. The Rocket did this for Cleveland last series as well, winning 2 games in Cleveland and then finishing out the series at home. It just lessens the travel needed. So they're not playing 2 games at home, 2 games on the road potentially, and then coming home for a game. It cuts down the travel for that, costs anything else with that. It was quite a night because you have at one end of the ice, one of the top goaltenders in the AHL, Devin Levi for the Rochester Americans. He was phenomenal all season. He has a .67 goals against in this playoff so far with 2 shutouts over Syracuse. And the surprise was that Caden Primo got the start for the Rocket. With that, Pascal Vincent said they were going to go to a rotation on this. They have the bodies to make that work. Caden Primo was one of the top goalies in the AHL this year. And when we get further into questions and everything else, because I'm sure there'll be some about the game, Caden Primo, they might be 4 goals on the board. I don't think you can blame him too much for that. But it was a back and forth affair. Rocket give up a goal, score 2. Give up the lead to go down 3-2, come back and lead 4-3, go down and end up tied 4-4. And then at the in the final 5 minutes, I dogged Joshua Waugh all night for bad defensive plays, wins a puck battle, feeds Logan Mailloux at the point. Mailloux walks into the slot, throws a hard low wrist shot, and Oliver Kapanen making his presence felt all across the board tonight in that game, last night, I should say. Deflects it by Devin Levi for a 5th goal. Caden Primo shuts the door at the horn. The Rocket come away 5-4 winners in an absolutely bonkers game that featured 2 of the best goaltenders in the NHL, in the AHL, 9 goals, and they were still arguably 2 of the best players on the ice that night. It's not often you can say that outside of like 1987, but it was very much the case in this game. It was something, let me tell you. It was, if you haven't got a chance to watch it, highly recommend you go back and watch the replay if you're looking to kill 2.5 hours.
Honestly, I was watching it as a fan, right? So with the NHL team, more often I approach it trying to be a little bit more analytical. But with the Rocket, I was trying to do that as well, right? Like we are obviously covering the Rocket playoff run. but I just got caught up in how entertaining it was, but there was a lot of ridiculousness I felt. And I don't know if I would call them sloppy. I would just call them very like it felt a little bit sometimes Benny Hill.
The whole game felt like Rochester came out strong, came out good, had 2 power plays, scored on one of them. The goal and the Rocket have done this all year. They did it against Cleveland. Is we got scored on. Time to try, which is maybe a little bit maddening because it's like, oh, you can do this at any point. And then they pour it on, take a lead into the first intermission, and then a penalty, a sloppy play, a slightly extended stay in the defensive zone, and all the momentum is back with Rochester, and they score to tie it, take the lead, and the Rocket go, well, I guess we got to try again. They go out there, and then they dominate shift after shift and all the little things. It was sloppy, but Pascal Vincent seemed very happy with the effort. It's about managing the emotions in that you're up, and then you're down, and you've got to battle back. You've got to keep your head level in this. I believe it was, I'm trying to think of who it was in the post game, but said it's a mature team, that they've been preaching that all year. And I think it might've been Caden Primo said it's a young team, but it's a mature team in there. And they showed that this game very easily could have gotten away with them. Devin Levi made a ton of big saves, just like Jet Greaves did in the last season in the last series for Cleveland. And the Rocket kept it level. There were mistakes, but there wasn't panic. There was one maybe scramble where Caden Primo got beat on a wraparound play that I would consider it panic. And they're going to tighten those things up. It's not often that they have a sloppy game and they don't immediately dial things back in a little bit.
Yeah.
To this on Friday, they will be playing game 2 in Rochester at a 7:05 puck drop for that.
And this is not the first time. Like we saw this happen literally in the past run. They had a really unmotivated game, I would call it. I wouldn't even call it sloppy. At least in this game, there was some energy, right? And then they turned it around and dominated to win the series the previous time. So
they are such a fun team because Xavier Simoneau left the game with an injury, and they just rotated the wing spot there with Florian Xhekaj and Owen Beck, and whomever was available took extra shifts in there, and it doesn't look like any of them missed a beat. The defense doesn't look like they missed a beat. When they had to lock it down, sticks in lanes, pucks away from the net, off the glass and out, all the things that you want to see from your team, and the basics and the consistency is part of that. And it's impressive to watch them when they turn it on. There's teams that they just can't keep up with it. Watching the end of the second period when the Rocket took the lead into the second intermission, it was a shift after shift. The Amerks couldn't get the puck out, couldn't get the long change. The Rocket kept changing on the fly, and then they scored. It's just relentless pressure after pressure after pressure, and that's where they win these games. They're deep. They have multiple prospects with NHL-like potential there sitting in the press box just because they don't have the lineup space for him right now. If Xavier Simoneau can't go, you can put him Philip Machar. You can put in Luke Tuck. You can put Vincent Arsenault back in if he's healthy. He's not a prospect, but he plays his role very well for this team. You can put in a Riley Kidney, a Will Dineen, potentially Tyler Thorpe, etc. On defense, Noel Hoffenmeyer's not playing. He was one of their regular 6 or 7 rotating defensemen this year. Zach Hayes was a rotating defenseman. They don't have Josh Jacobs, who blew out his knee. Owen Protz, I could continue to go on and on listing all the pieces they have, but they're a team that one injury isn't going to fully derail everything with them.
And I have 2 more things I want to get to in this segment because the rest of this episode is all mailbag. We do have Laval Rocket questions in the mailbag, but I really, with respect to last night, 2 things I want to ask real quick. I didn't even give Joshua Watt credit for that last goal, which is my bad. Like when I was talking about it yesterday, I was just so caught up in how disappointed I was in him. So I wanted your perspective on Joshua Watt overall with that inconsistency, and then I want to talk about the Arber Xhekaj, Florian Xhekaj moment that you reported last night.
So here's the thing with Joshua Watt, and I said this in the Cleveland series, and he turned it on at the right time in that. He looked extremely unmotivated in game 3 of the Cleveland series. They had a chance to sweep, and he just wasn't all there. And then game 4, he comes out. He's finishing his checks. He's in the right spot. He got a secondary assist on what I think ended up being the game-winning goal in that game by working hard and doing all those little things. Last night, game starts, takes a penalty early in the first period. Cale Clegg scores on that. He got lucky to get away with another one where he hit a guy. It's shoulder to shoulder, but it's behind. It's close enough to the numbers that I'm surprised the officials let it go. The other people in the press row also kind of thought it was surprising it got let go. He had, some roughing penalties, and then just defensively, he's getting caught flat-footed a little bit. And I know he's capable of more. And that's where the problem comes in, is that I know Joshua Waugh is capable of more than what I've seen all year. His numbers are there. And when he's on, he's on. But when he's off, it's very noticeable. And he fits in very well. His line with Oliver Kapanen and Brandon Gignac, the Kapanen and Gignac work so well together. And Waugh, when he's finally kind of got his game going a little bit, that trio is extremely hard to keep a handle on, because then you have to figure out if you're going to dedicate the bodies to them, to the fourth line with Owen Beck and Florian Xhekaj and Jared Davidson, to the first line with Sean Farrell and Alex Barré-Boulet and Laurent Dauphin, to the second line with Condata and Harvey Pinard. And it's a nightmare to pay attention to. I am hoping that his rough first game here is a precursor to better things happening, because Waz had games where he scored a hat trick, put up 3 assists, put up 5 points. He loves to play the Amerks. This should be a series where he is ready to go and to take over that. And I'm hoping that first game and getting the assist on that game winner clicks things into place for him. Because if he's going, the Rocket are going to forget about it. There's not a team that I think can match that depth in the Eastern Conference right now.
And when we come back, we're going to talk about Arber and Florian Xhekaj. We want some insight as to their moment last night, but also overall on Florian Xhekaj this season overall. And that's coming up in just one moment. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like playoff hockey. The energy, the rivalries, and the nonstop action, and also the Toronto Maple Leafs losing. With the Stanley Cup playoffs heating up, there's never been a better time to see it live, and Game Time makes getting in the building fast and affordable. Game Time gives you last-minute ticket deals, zone deals for deep discounts, panoramic seat views, and all-in pricing with no hidden fees. Plus, ticket prices often drop the closer you get to puck drop, so you can score big without overpaying. Here's what I love about using Game Time. For me, the seat view is so important because you could check it out before you buy, and you can see where you're going to be. If Toronto loses and you were a fan, well, actually, there's a whole bunch of other stuff coming up. Like, speaking of planning ahead, the NFL schedule release just dropped, and you better believe I'm looking at my fall calendar and picking which games to hit. Game Time makes scoring NFL tickets just as easy. You'll find great seats for as low as $100 thanks to exclusive discounts. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, we're back with my wonderful former co-host, Scott Matla, who was covering the Rocket game live and in person last night. And as he was getting ready, I believe, to go to the press conferences, he caught a cute moment between Xhekaj brothers.
So I was on my way out, actually. We had just finished the post-game press conferences, so I was, getting my bag all up and everything. And at some point, someone had come back to talk to some of the guys. Logan Mailloux exited his interview, and there was some kind of friendly commotion in the hallway. Let me phrase that properly. That, I'm like, oh, there must be, family, friends maybe made the trip down, this or that. And finish up with Pascal Vincent, talking with the media folks for a second, and then heading outside to drive back to Buffalo, file the recap and everything. And I'm walking through the doors. I'm looking down at my phone to send a message, I believe, to our group chat with you and Ian, and to tell my fiance that I am alive and driving home shortly. And as I'm walking forward, someone steps back directly into me. And I look up, and all I can think is, oh, what the hell? Who is this? And I look up, and I recognize the face and the mustache and everything immediately. It's Arber Xhekaj and either one of their siblings or one of their significant others. I wasn't 100% sure on that. And he and Florian Xhekaj are having a very spirited, brotherly discussion, I'm pretty sure, about what they would do in a scrum fighting somebody. I didn't put everything together, but all I can describe as Arber Xhekaj is just, narrative with the a boom, a boom, a boom. And he's throwing like pretend jumping punches and like trying to like, if he's tight, he's got Florian Xhekaj like gripped like they're in a hockey fight. And if you're not watching this on YouTube, you are missing an Oscar-worthy performance. And it's showing him how you can like knock the hand down to break the grip on him and switch your handedness for fighting and everything. And when I say it's spirited, I mean that there's people like outside who are waiting for autographs and everything who are now looking inside and realizing like, oh, Arber Xhekaj's here and he's hanging out with his brother, teaching him how to fight and all this other stuff. Some of the call-ups, some of the guys that might have played with Arber last year came out of the locker room afterwards to catch up with one of their former teammates, some of the former Habs. Clearly a very beloved figure at both the AHL and NHL level there, but listening Florian Xhekaj, and I mean this in the nicest way possible, is a perfect clone of Arber Xhekaj's level of nastiness. But if you mix in that Brendan Gallagher like peskiness with that, in that after the whistle, he or Xavier Simoneau across this game was just like, I'm just gonna scooch in here. Oh, the goalie's standing there. I'm gonna get as close to him as I can before somebody comes over and grabs me. And at one point last night, Devin Levi makes a save. He starts skating away. Florian Xhekaj coming to the crease, and Zach Metza, who is one of the Amerks' top defensemen, just grabs a guy skating towards his crease. And as he looks at it, he realizes he has Florian Xhekaj, who's about 4 inches taller than he is, and just goes, it's not worth it, and just kind of like pushes him away. I'm kind of living for Arber doing the Brady Tkachuk for Matthew Tkachuk thing in the playoffs here. And if he's going to the games, I know Jakob Dobish has been at a couple of them. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the other Habs are hanging out as well, based on how many of them have graduated and played with a lot of these guys recently. So it was a nice, heartwarming moment to see that had they lost the game, it probably would have been a little bit more like, you got to do this next time, like serious brother talk. It's just two guys being dudes is the best way I can describe it. And I think that's how Ian would have described it as well. But it was very funny to walk out right into nearly getting trampled over by Arber Xhekaj last night.
I'll tell you though, if they're comparing what to do in a scrum, I think we all know what's going to happen in a scrum is all of the linesmen are going to abandon all of the murder happening in the ice, and they're going to just concentrate on keeping the Xhekaj brothers away from everyone.
It's funny that you say that. So the Amerks scored first last night, and Pascal Vincent puts Owen Beck, Florian Xhekaj, and Jared Davidson on the ice. The Amerks put out what I believe was their fourth line, and Florian Xhekaj off the draw. He's giving him a little nudge. The one linesman looks at him, and I look down, I look up, and all of a sudden there are 3 linesmen and the ref have surrounded just Florian Xhekaj, not the guy next to him, not anybody else. There are 3 of them like having him in containment, like he's, going to break out and just start, murdering people. He's unfortunately going to have the same reputation as his older brother with the officials, but it's not that it isn't well earned. You don't lead the AHL in penalty minutes without a reason.
So we're going to get into our mailbag and get to as many questions as possible. But if we do not get into your question, don't worry. We will definitely get into it at some point over the next week or so, if not in next week's mailbag. But we're going to start with username Xhekaj Face Punch. That's our friend Adam. And I just figured that would be, timely to use that to go with his question first. Mailbag question. Let's ignore the fact that some players are projected to be better NHLers than others. Owen Beck, Jacob Fowler, etc., etc. Which of our AHL players are most ready to fill their appropriate spots in the Montreal Canadiens lineup? I imagine this excludes guys like Joshua Roy, Sean Farrell, or Raphael Harvey-Pinard, as our top 9 is looking pretty solid on the wing right now. But this could include guys like Beck and Mayu, but I am most interested in hearing about depth players like Kandata, Florian Xhekaj, Luke Tuck, and maybe defense prospects like Trudeau or Engstrom, and I'm going to throw in Davidson for that.
So on a tier list, I think Sean Farrell this year has proven that with a player who thinks similarly to him, is that they're very cerebral. Everything is quick and off the stick. His partnership with Alex Barré-Boulet works because they get the puck and it's off their stick. They don't let you close in on them. They're smaller players who have learned to play small. He doesn't have the evasiveness that Lane Hudson has, or maybe potentially the shot that Cole Caulfield has, but he has the smarts to make sure he knows what he needs to do. And it's been a huge heater. I think we have some other Sean Farrell questions in here. I wouldn't discount him potentially being a smart bottom six guy next year for the Habs. Owen Beck, I think, he's going to be your gritty bottom six playoff center. He last night did everything you could ask for a guy. He won faceoffs, set up a big goal. He's out there in all the crucial situations. He's killing penalties. He's blocking shots. He's someone that I think is going to get a long look. They're going to give him every opportunity to be the Christian Dvorak replacement next year. Because we know Jake Evans is coming back. He's going to be a guy that they're going to give him the runway for that. Jared Davidson's a similar spot. I think he's going to likely be a fourth line guy. He brings the energy, some physicality. He can shoot. His skating's a little wonky a little bit. Maybe the defense isn't totally where you want it to be, but he scores big goals. And he's not an overly large guy, but he plays above his weight on that. And I think he's the ideal kind of guy that it's very similar to an Emil Heineman type player, that he's going to run through a wall for you, hopefully not get hit by any cars in Utah. And I think he's going to have that opportunity. Florian Xhekaj is your potential fourth line center of the future and long term.
I really love that.
He scored 24 goals this year, led the league in penalty minutes, and still was a very, very good penalty killer. Watching him kill penalties this year was a treat because he's aggressive but composed. And everyone looks at him as, he's a goon, he's going to be a fighter. Nope, he's got that next level. Logan Mailloux, Adam Engstrom are guys that I think are going to get that audition spot. They're going to give him a chance to make that top 6 or 7 with the Habs. I know that it's crowded, and I know there's other bodies there. David Reinbacher is going to be in there as well, but everyone's kind of assuming he's going to make that jump anyways. But I think if Mailloux continues to learn the defensive side of the game, he's made strides this year. It's not a strength, but it's gotten better. And Adam Engstrom has the flash and the sizzle as a potential second power play guy to really make the Habs a dangerous team there. There's a lot of guys in this group that could have gotten NHL call-ups this year. The Habs shockingly didn't need many of them, and it will have every opportunity. Training camp's going to be competitive next year, and that's what you want for a team looking to take that next step in a rebuild.
That sound you heard was me knocking on wood that the Canadiens didn't need as many call-ups this year as they usually do. All right, up next, we've got a couple more mailbag questions that we are going to get to with our esteemed guest, and that's coming up in just one moment. So we've got a question for me, and the question comes from the Hockey Boomer on Blue Sky. My question is, why are you letting him back in? You just got rid of him. And my answer to that is our podcaster emeritus, obviously this is in good jest, this is somebody who loves Scott, is that Scott is always welcome. Whenever he wants to join myself or Ian or both, he is a founding pillar of this show, and I love hearing from him. And honestly, when I go on vacation as well, I secretly hope every day when I listen to Ian that Scott is one of his guests. All right, we have a question from good friend Jeff the Red, who says, welcome back, Scoot. Sean Farrell got off to a really rough start this season, but he's been extremely productive since about mid-season and into the playoffs. Has his prospect status changed in your eyes since early in the season?
That is a very, very good question, just because I was very worried about Sean Farrell, the way that he was one of I think he was one of the 2 or 3 AHL players that was drafted that hadn't scored a goal in the first 20 games of the season or so. And then they stuck him with Alex Barré-Boulet and Laurent Dauphin and just forget about it. He has 6 points in 5 playoff games right now.
Mm-hmm.
I am trying to bring up his game by game here. At one point, he just decided, what if I'm just the best player in the AHL? He came back into February and just basically hit a heater. 3-point game, 3-point game, 2-point 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 game. It all the way down the stretch. Yeah. He finished 44 points in 67 games, 10 penalty minutes, +8, 4 power play goals, 3 game-winning goals, 1 shootout attempt. He's someone that I really am rooting for. He's someone I wrote his draft profile. Cole Caulfield loves this player. I think that as he's learned a little bit how to be a potential NHL level player is important. The hard part is he's hitting the edge of that prospect window. He turns 24 next, which is wild. He's only 23 and we're considering, oh, he's not a prospect anymore. But I think he's someone that they're going to re-sign. They're going to give him that 2-year window, be like, okay, prove it. He's got the smarts to make things happen. It's one of the best things I notice about him is that he always makes the right play. He's got some speed to burn there. And if he can play top line AHL minutes in all situations, lead a very good power play, there's no reason why he can't push for a spot with the Habs. The fourth line doesn't just have to be grinding and physical if you have smart guys. It's can he adapt his game to playing with someone like Jake Evans? And I think that he easily could as well. It's just, can he mesh with somebody else there? Or is he going to be Charles Hudon 2.0, where he's a very, very good AHL player, can't fully stick at the NHL? I'm still rooting for that opportunity, though.
A couple of things you said in there that just screams Marty would love this guy to me, right? Smart, all situations. Marty, that screams Marty to me. So I do think the Canadiens will give him the shot, and it will be like Jeff Gorton says, it'll be up to him where in the lineup he plays. Another question from Jeff the Red. We might go a couple of minutes over time on this episode just because we have so many questions, and it's not every day we get the lovely Scott with us. And Jeff asks, obviously, Jacob Fowler should get some seasoning in the AHL before we consider him a legitimate NHL option. Do you see him getting a taste of the NHL next year? If so, what would be a good number of NHL games for his development? In my mind, I think it's still Caden Primo that gets called up if there's a need for him, which hopefully there is no need, right? Because that means somebody got hurt. What are your thoughts, Scott?
The hard part is not so much what do you do with Jacob Fowler, it's what do you do with Caden Primo, who is an RFA after this season. So they have his rights still, and he just put together an incredible AHL season, kind of rebuilt some of that aura around him. The Habs this earlier season were not good. Caden Primo was not great. The team itself wasn't great. We know that. And it's tough because I'd like Caden Primo back as the Rocket goalie, but you're going to have to get him through waivers. And looking at how well he played in the AHL last year, you risk losing him for nothing and kind of sitting on your hands now without a viable option to help Jacob Fowler. Connor Hughes is going back to Switzerland, signed a 5-year deal, which is a monumental thing for a Swiss goalie in the NLA there. But I think that Jacob Fowler, I think next year your tandem is Dobish and Montembeault in the NHL, unless, Fowler steals the job and Dobish isn't great, which I have no reason to doubt Jakob Dobish at this point. I think if Fowler got maybe 10 games, if they're giving Montembeault a break, or, Dobish is, if anyone is, and I'm knocking on wood, dinged up, I think if he got around 10 NHL games next year, you're probably doing pretty well. And I think he's going to get the bulk of your AHL starts. I don't expect them to do what they did with Jakob Dobish in his first year, where he started like 50 plus games. They're going to want to manage that expectation, that balance a little bit. But I could see Fowler being a 45 start guy in the AHL with a regular solid veteran backup like Connor Hughes was this year, and then maybe some spot NHL duty. The hope is that you let him play the most games like they did with Dobish this year and get to that next level. And for those who are wondering why Primo got the start, they're rotating goalies. I would expect to see Jacob Fowler in game 2 on Friday night. It's not that he was bad. It's not that Primo was bad. It's just rotation. It's what the coach said.
It makes sense. All right. I want to get to a couple more questions. There's a question from our good friend Boondoggle about centers, but I'm actually going to table that because that question gave me an idea for regular segments that Ian and I can do. So we're going to table that one about centers, but we are going to talk about centers. One of our good friends, Claude Sauvé, has a great question. I know the focus has been on a number 2C, but what do you think about an offer sheet for Jack McBain as a number 3C? I think he would look good as a replacement for Dvorak between Gallagher and Anderson. So, our segment 2C or not 2C. We now apparently have 3C or not 3C. What are your thoughts on this? For me, I feel like it is, if they're going to replace Dvorak, they will do it from within.
Yeah, I'm looking at McBain's numbers because I remember he was a big college free agent guy, and 27 points in 82 games on the Utah Hockey Club last year, 13 goals, 14 assists, 78 penalty minutes plus 8. That's just, Jake Evans, but I almost called him not Canadian, but Jake Evans is from Canada, so that's not the point. I mean, it doesn't feel like it moves the needle in the right direction. I think I'd rather give Owen Beck that opportunity, even if it's as the 4C, and move Jake Evans up to the 3C spot there. I'm not blown away by that idea. My thought is still that they're going to bunch a bunch of things up and trade for a 2C this offseason and let Alex Newhook play the wing like he should. And maybe Kirby Dach has moved to the wing like he's probably likely the best at right now if he's not part of a trade package. But
yeah,
McBain seems like the kind of thing that maybe it is what it is, but I want to say he just got extended, but I might be wrong. Regardless, it's not exciting, is probably the nicest way I can phrase that.
All right, so I've got a couple questions from Randy Hansen. We've already answered Sean Farrell. He wanted to know if he's done enough to warrant a new contract. And also it is, yes, agreed, make or break time for him this upcoming season. A couple of quick ones. Is Florian as big in person as he seems on screen?
No, he and Art. So this is the most surprising thing is I'm not an overly tall person. I'm 6'2", about 255 on any given day. And Arber Xhekaj not on skates seems like a normal sized person. Florian Xhekaj is roughly the same size as him, but he's a little bit more slim. But when you put all the hockey gear on and you put skates on and you realize that they have the persona of a dog that has seen a squirrel in a tree when they want to get after somebody, it becomes a lot more intimidating. There is something to be said about presence. They're not small people by any means, but what you see on TV with the what is basically body armor and everything else on is makes them a little bit larger than you would expect.
There's another question from Claude Sauvé that I'm also going to turn into a segment as well. Another question from Randy is the annual collapse of Toronto just the best form of entertainment for hockey fans outside of Leafs diehards? I have to admit the collapse of Matthews and crew gives me a giddy joy.
I can't believe it's 6-1 game that I looked down at the score in the press box and went, it's 6-0, and someone just went, and that was all that was said about it.
Yeah, that was it. I've got a question that's going to be a little bit annoying, but before that, what has Scott the most surprised or pleased about with this year's team? I think
the
he meant
Habs or the
Rocket, the Rocket, specifically the Rocket.
I think Florian Xhekaj being as good as he has been the biggest surprise for me. Caden Primo's rebound is also a really big reason why this team is where it's at. Dobish was very good. Connor Hughes was very good. Caden Primo was a cut above that, like best in the league kind of thing. Just the fact that this team, even when there's injuries, guys out, key pieces, they just kept rolling. It's not, you didn't see Rocket losing streaks this year. I think they maybe lost multiple games in a row 2 or 3 times max. I knew they were going to be good. I didn't think they were going to be this good. The whole team's been a surprise. I really liked what I saw from Luke Tuck before his injury. They did this without Brendan Gignac for most of the year, without Joshua Waugh. Owen Beck missed a little bit of time with his call-ups, but that new fourth line of Beck, Xhekaj, and Davidson has been a revelation in the playoffs and something that I am looking forward to just watching even more.
Our good friend Charles W asks, all of our regulars are coming out for this Scott appearance. Let's say the Canadiens signed Tavares or Marchand on a short-term deal. Which one do you think would be the hardest for the fans to get over their previous hate for?
John Tavares. Here's the thing about Brad Marchand is his friendship with Brendan Gallagher at the Worlds is something that I think a lot of people could bond over with that. John Tavares not giving the Habs an interview, the whole aftermath of him running face first into Corey Perry's knee and the way Leafs fans took that. Also, it's just, he's weird and he promotes Russell Brand adjacent things. So screw him and no thank you.
The amulet.
The amulet, yeah.
Me too. I think it's the John Tavares refusing to meet with the Canadiens. I think that's the biggest one. Also, there's just something about him that feels washed, a lot more washed than Sidney Crosby. Again, people keep yelling at me about this, but it's not, we can't have an episode without actually talking about Crosby. So let's close it on this question. It comes from Jacob T. Hey, Laura and Scott. With all the talk about trying to trade for Crosby, is there any wisdom to trying to make that a package deal for Crosby with Letang? To me, this makes sense on a variety of fronts. 1. The biggest barrier to a Crosby trade is to make Sid want your team. While the draw applying for playing for your childhood team might not be enough, perhaps the draw of playing on your childhood team with one of your better friends, who's also a childhood fan of that team, might make the whole situation more enticing. Number 2, given age and injuries, Letang might be a negative value asset from the point of view of the Penguins. The Canadiens being willing to take on the contract alone makes their offer for Sid potentially more interesting compared to what Colorado or another team could offer. With 3 years remaining at $6.1 million per, the Canadiens can afford to take the contract, and in the worst case scenario, LTIR him for the last year. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And then finally, Letang likely still has a season or two of good hockey in him and would be an upgrade on Savard. While not exactly Noah Dobson, he represents a right-hand veteran presence to solidify the defense. Anyways, please tell me why I'm wrong here. Love the show.
I'm looking at the numbers and I go, maybe, but also I forget that Sidney Crosby was on some of these teams, and Letang, well, not perfect, was probably a perfectly cromulent defenseman last year. If we can't get Sidney Crosby and we're trading for people who want to cheer for their hometown team, I would just trade for Nazem Kadri. 1, because it would make Leaf fans mad, and 2, because I love Nazem Kadri. So it's, as a package deal, I worry about the cap space on that, because you have a Lane Hudson contract, you have a whole bunch of potentially new deals starting in the next year with their extensions. And the Canadiens, they will get the cap space back from the Petrie and Allen retention. It's not my ideal scenario, but I almost could imagine Chris Letang coming to Montreal before Sidney Crosby, just because it's Sid.
He can be the new Savard.
He wears 58 and he's old and French Canadian and won a cup once or twice. So it fits. It's just, he's an offensive defenseman who can't defend instead of a defensive defenseman who can't defend anymore. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to.
He won 3 cups.
Yeah, well, who among us hasn't won 3 cups? So I'm not against it. It's just, I don't know if Kent Hughes can fit that wizardry under the cap, and whether or not Penn still value Chris Letang as a valuable asset on their team or not.
I'm all for it for the handsomeness element of it, but also for me, it's whatever gets Sidney Crosby here. Let's do that without mortgaging the entire future, right? Like, that's really important. All right, Scott, you are unfortunately no longer on this podcast, although our lovely Ian will be back on Monday, and a lot of the mailbag questions that you guys sent us, we're actually going to turn them into actual full segments. In fact, one of them is going to become a recurring segment. But in the meantime, Scott, where can people find you, your work, and will you come back when there's something to be gloating about, maybe?
Well, I will always be around whenever I feel like joining the show there. You can follow me on Blue Sky. Just search my name. You'll find me somewhere. You can find all my work at Habs Eyes on the Prize still. And then I have my own Substack where I'm slowly writing about just video games and other nonsense that comes to my mind. I have an article pinned at the top of my Blue Sky thing. If you follow me on social media, cool. If you don't, well, just try and find me otherwise then. So that's all for me.
And as for us, we will be back. As you know, we're 5 days a week. We're not going down to 3 days until July, August. So we're still going to have plenty of content. And as the off season starts getting going, as the games wind down, we'll be covering everything. And so make sure you're subscribed to this podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. You can find us all over social media at Locked On Canadiens. We're Locked On Canadiens on Blue Sky, on TikTok, on Instagram, and at Gmail, where we love getting your mailbag questions, but also just general observations. Did you ever run into a Xhekaj brother? Tell us about it. And as I said, my lovely co-host will be back on Monday. You can find him on social media at @BabyThean. You will find me at The Active Stick. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you on Monday.